Recording in progress.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the adoption of the agenda. Second.
Yes.
Mackey?
Yes.
Newton?
Yes.
Motion approved.
Thank you. Item 3, the strategic planning workshop report and the continuation of our discussion related to goals. We met on Tuesday and got through, I believe, 2 or 3 additional initiatives that were tied to our goals. And before I started going to the next one, I just wanted to give my colleagues a minute. Did anyone have anything that they wanted to add or address in any of the items that were previously discussed? So we last stopped at objective 4.2. So anything before that anyone wanted to address before we move forward? All right, hearing none. Moving on to objective 4.3, create excellent amenities and facilities. We had one initiative there was to define goals for excellent amenity and facility creation and prepare maps to identify areas that are lacking plans for maintenance repairs to be targeted.
A lot of our facilities include elected and appointed officials. How do we engage them in it? Because they make a lot of decisions about those facilities. So do we need to figure out a way to make sure they engage here or accountable or something? Because they influence so many of our facilities.
I would say yes, sir, Mr. Chair. I would think that at least a couple of the facilities that you have already considered over time and maybe reconsidering going forward are currently in process. You've identified funding for some, and I think there are some future ones, but I think probably the short answer to your question is yes, we need to include them, but I think you have already included a significant number of them, and the other ones are really addressed to one of the last remaining items, which, if you don't mind me saying, really deals with the courthouse. But you've addressed recently Sheriff's Department as an elected official. You've addressed magistrates' offices and provided funding for them. And then I think the majority of our, you've addressed the coroner's office in large part. I think there's maybe one other component, but the large majority of other elected officials that are not connected in the current facility here at 2020 Hampton would be in the courthouse, sir. But I think as we look to address that, you would want to get their involvement.
Let's include them then in the accountability ownership box there.
Noted.
Gotcha.
So for timeline, we have fiscal year 2023. Okay. Ms. Newton would like to speak. Let me finish this and then I'll go to Ms. Newton next. We have timeline fiscal year 2023 for defining goals for excellent amenities and facility creation, and then to prepare maps to identify. And so we have Economic Development Office, Office of Small Business, and then is GCS is
Government and Community Services.
And so within any of this, when we say, I guess when we talk about amenities, also I was wondering, are we defining other groups maybe outside of this recreation, for example? Are we looking at that as well, or not included as a kind of partner in this?
Yeah, I think we can include that. This is probably one of those where when it was described, we may not have appropriately identified all the layers to that. So I think we could be open to figuring out what that looks like here internally, and then as you relate to the community partners. So like you mentioned, but I think because we talked about accountability and ownership, we were really looking at what we could control as a county, and not putting that on other people that we didn't necessarily have direct control over.
Ms. Newton?
Thank you, Ms. Mackey. And if it works for you, I'll just use the Zoom to raise my hand in the future. You both just addressed on part of my question, which is that I feel that the word amenities needs to be defined because I'm not clear what it means. And oftentimes the word amenities is used to describe things that would be external to Richland County and, well, Richland County government, that is, and more quality of life items. So in my community, when we talk about amenities, for example, we tend to be referring to entertainment or restaurants or those kinds of things, whereas it's here being mixed with things like county facilities where you receive government services. So I would like to be clear on what the objective is and what that means as we move forward, and not just looking at, to Mr. Livingston's point, which was well taken, looking at how we partner with our other elected officials, but just being clear on what are all of the things that means for Richland County government services. And so, yeah, I mean, I really don't understand what this means, and it would be hard for me to stand behind this goal without more information.
Would it be, and this is for the committee, would it be fair to remove amenities and just focus on creating excellent facilities as it relates to our county and our government buildings?
Unless we're missing something based on what someone meant by amenities.
Ms. Newton?
Yes. So I wasn't part of the group that added this to the list. So if the intent of this was just to be facilities, then that's fine. But even to that point, as we look at excellent facilities, is it just that we want our facilities to be nice looking? Is it that we want our facilities to be located in places where constituents need them? Is it that within a certain amount of radius, you're able to access the key functions of county government you need? So even if we do remove amenities, which is fine with me, I still do think that there are opportunities to further define this. And to, I think, one of your questions earlier, Ms. Mackey, as it relates to recreation, I'm not sure where it's included here, or if it's appropriate for us to talk about as part of this committee workshop today. But I do think that recreation and quality of life are important parts of a conversation that we need to have as we look at our strategic plan.
Thank you. So for the initiative, and this is my thought, is that the initiative for defining goals would answer the questions, Ms. Newton, that you're saying as far as what is it that we want to be, or what is it that we're looking to achieve. I think that would come out of the initiative where we would define the goals of what, or we would establish the goals for what excellent facilities look like and actually put that out, and then develop the maps to identify where we're lacking. If everyone is okay, I would recommend that we remove amenities and just have this be a focus on facilities as it relates to government buildings that we control versus outside entities.
Ms. Maggie,
Yes.
if you don't mind, I certainly want to not muddy the waters, and I appreciate the committee taking this on. When you talk about defining goals for facility creation, and a little bit to Ms. Newton's point, but and to your point, we could have one of the goals that we define to determine, how Richland County can either maybe the word could be support or help our partner agencies realize, facilities that enhance the quality of life. And so we could work to figure out what we could do, and we could make it an intention on our part to provide them either feedback, guidance, whatever the county wanted to do. Even though we don't control what they do, we could still provide them information that we believe they should consider in terms of providing facilities in the county in areas that they're responsible for, even though we're not saying we take ownership of that, but we take ownership of providing that information or feedback to see things the way that we think they would support the community. So in terms of just defining a goal for us. So just something to think about as you consider how you want to have an impact beyond what you're already describing here.
All right. Any thoughts from the committee about the direction that Mr. Brown just suggested for this initiative?
It would be in addition to what you already said.
Yes, it'd be in addition to.
Okay.
Yes, sorry. Any thoughts on what I had said that Mr. Brown added to for this initiative? So hearing none, I'm going to take that as that the committee is okay with this and staff is going to update this initiative per those recommendations. Objective 4.4, provide equitable living and housing options. Identify corridors that are lacking housing, create check-in meetings with others, Charlotte and Greenville County, review Richland County housing options to establish equitable living and address gaps in resident funding capabilities. All right, Ms. Newton, anything?
Thank you for calling on me. Sure. You just figured I'd have a question. So I have a general question about this process. Well, a specific question here, but it's also a general question. And that is how or at what point would metrics be created? Because and maybe metrics isn't the only word here, perhaps it's criteria, because to identify corridors that are lacking in housing options, which is the first item, you would have to set up some criteria about what does it mean to be lacking in housing options. And that's the only way that, we would then be able to move forward and establish metrics that say how we are moving forward. Also, at some point, I don't know if we're going to define what equitable living and housing options are, but that's my question. How will those metrics and definitions be developed and or when?
I'm sorry, Ms. Newton, was that a like direct question, or was that just kind of open that you want everybody to consider?
Well, I think it is a direct question, but if you can't answer it specifically for this goal, but just want to talk about how metrics and definitions are going to be applied as part of this process, then that's fine. If it's not appropriate to talk about it right now, then I just want to note that I feel like it has to be done. Otherwise, there's no way to know that we're successful or for us to drill down to attack the goal.
Got it. I do think somewhere in this objective, we should define equitable and what that means for our county, right? So I agree with adding that. And then as far as the metrics piece, I'm going to see if staff has any suggestions or if we need to come back to this.
So I think that we would have to take a look at what that definition is to then determine that criteria. So then what we will be measuring after that. So I think that would be the order, Ms. Mackey.
I guess I had, I'm not sure where this came from, but check-in meetings with Charlotte and Greenville to understand regional trends and sentiments. I'm not sure that we need to be that specific as far as Charlotte and Greenville. I really would like us to define more so what equitable means for our county and then look for best practices for other areas that are similar to ours, because where Charlotte is in their development is completely different than what stage we are in right now. So I would like us to kind of find someone that's more, a county that's more aligned with us, to be realistic as we have check-ins and understand how to grow in the way that we need to grow. So I agree with looking for best practices, but I'm not sure if we need to be as specific to say that Charlotte and Greenville are the ones that we need to be checking in with. Open to thoughts or comments on that one.
Ms. Mackey?
Yes.
I agree with your point specifically, and it's also a comment that I have across this document. There are some places where it seems surprisingly granular to me before we really delve into exploring the goals. But I also just wanted to add, in case I wasn't clear before, absolutely we need to define what equitable looks like, but we also need to define, you know, what a housing option looks like. Does it mean just that there are houses or apartments or dwellings that exist? Does it mean that they exist and I can afford them? Does it mean that they exist for a family of 25 or a single person or whatever the case may be? I just think that whole thing needs to be fleshed out more.
Agree. Mr. Livingston?
Everything else.
Okay. Staff, anything else on this one? Do you feel like you got enough? Okay. All right, so for goal 4, plan for growth through inclusive and equitable infrastructure. Is there anything that we feel we did not cover in this goal that anyone thinks that we need to put up for consideration when you think about equitable and inclusive infrastructure? Great. Goal 5, achieve poverty.
Sorry, I was muted, Miss Mackey.
Oh, yes.
I apologize.
No.
I don't have anything that I want to add to the list, but because we paused halfway through the goal yesterday, going back and looking that this overall goal is talking about infrastructure makes me feel even better about the decision that we made to remove amenities from 4.3.
Thank you. All right, goal 5. Achieve positive public engagement. Objective 5.1, champion the organization and county wins. And I'm not gonna read all this, but basically develop and implement a new website, develop a strategic communications plan, and review projects to compare Richland County efforts and incorporate into annual internal report. This lists several accountability partners, and these have the metrics listed for review. Mr. Livingston?
I was somewhere on the initiative. We probably did an initiative somewhere around about getting companies and public engaged and champion our cause as an initiative too, because that's where you get the biggest bang when you're trying to champion your cause, is for those folks who are receiving the service or companies who come to Richland County an initiative around that might be helpful.
Ms. Newton?
Well, I have some general comments and they go across all of these. So I'm going through these goals and I thought it was here, but I can't find it right now. I guess I want to be clear that somewhere in here is the idea of two-way communication and listening on the part of the county, because us just talking is part of public engagement, but providing opportunities for our constituents to talk to us and for us to listen is equally important. And as part of that process, um, talking about what we're doing, but making sure people understand what the role of the county is. So one, just want to emphasize the importance of listening, and the other, that education component, because this is an extreme example, but it did happen. I once had a constituent who was, frustrated that I wasn't able to help with his U.S. mail, and there's a good reason that I'm not able to help with that federal service delivery, but there's just a lot of confusion about what we do, and I think that it's important that both of those things be included in here. So those are just some general comments. I do have other comments about budget and some of the granularity of these items whenever it's appropriate.
Well, Ms. Newton, is your budget stuff related to 5.1 specifically, or just the overall?
Well, definitely. I think the overall goal, because there are different things there, but definitely 5.1. So if you look at the first one, develop a new county website. First, let me say the county absolutely positively could use a better website. I wholeheartedly support that idea. That's a really specific and granular objective, though, for it to be here. But it's also one that, to do well, can be costly. And so I am curious to know if that is included here. I'll just say wholeheartedly endorse the strategic communication plan and have been endorsing that since I've been on council. And I do not know what it means, the third point, to review neighboring projects. I don't know what that means. So that's what I have on 5.1.
Okay. I don't remember the third one either as far as neighboring projects. Staff, you remember?
I don't, and I would be happy actually to remove that one.
Yes, let's.
So then that would leave my
Website and the strategic plan.
Sure,
and so I think,
and I don't know too. I was just going to say, as it relates to the website, again, wholeheartedly think we need to do one. Having done that for really large organizations many times, it's a really long process. It involves the whole organization. If we want something that granular, there might need to be some sort of intermediate steps where we're looking at auditing the content, looking at the ways that we can better inform and engage the public with what we have while we work towards doing that comprehensive overhaul, because it would be a significant effort for Richland County as an organizational perspective and not just from a budgetary one.
thank you. I think that can be incorporated I think the initiative high level is the website, but as we look to how to do that, I think all those steps will be key. 5.2, foster positive relationships to allow us to tell our story.
What I mentioned earlier about company and public so forth, it fits better there in terms of telling our story. And for example, when you go to the Economic Development Mission, the best thing to do is take a company there, a manager, somebody there who can tell a story about what a great job the county is doing and how well they're benefiting from the county resources and so forth. So that'll fit better there to engage as an initiative to make sure that we consider engaging somewhere that public and businesses and companies and so forth.
Is that adding economic development office to this? because you mentioned business. So when you talk about
yeah, it could be,
accountability, is that adding economic development or?
Just folks to talk on behalf of the county who
Okay.
benefit from the county.
Ms. Newton?
Yes, you read this objective a little differently than it's written here, and I like what you said better, but I would like to just have us see if we can tweak the wording there, which we don't have to do here, because we're looking at fostering positive relationships, as we look at our constituents. And I think it's, for me, to my previous point about the talking and the listening, the relationships are two ways, and we're also telling our story. We're not building the relationships only so that we can talk about us. We're building the relationships and we're creating opportunities to tell our own story.
All right, 5.3, create a public information team focused on the public image. Create a communications team, ambassadors, make public information aware of department efforts. I feel like this one could really go back to 5.1 and be a part of the strategic communications plan. I'm not sure if we need 5.3 as a special call out, but happy to hear thoughts. Ms. Newton.
I'm fine with that. I again, to my other questions in 5.1, would just have questions about staffing, if that's in our budget, and that's something that I can take offline.
So I think right now there's a lot of things that we're talking about in here that may not be in our budget, but that's part of the process, is looking at this and figuring out as we move forward with future budgets how we can create these things.
I 100% agree. I guess for this one, this has been something that has been talked about by council since I've been here, and since when everyone else came on board, and I guess 2021, it's also been huge. And so as we're in the budget process now, and this is why I can take my answers separately offline, I would very much like to understand what our capacity is, at least as it relates to staffing for this item, because it consistently comes up as being something that's critical. And to the extent that we can address some small parts of it now, I would like that opportunity.
Mr. Livingston?
Madam Chair, may I?
Yes.
I'll try to be brief. On this particular item, I think the way in part that I envision it is putting our employees who are currently consistently already out before the public, engaging with citizens, engaging with agencies, providing them the ability to effectively do that. And this does not necessarily anticipate by itself bringing in new staff just for this purpose. It is equipping staff that you already have in large part to do a job of being an ambassador in a way that supports what the county is doing, because they're already engaging with the public on a continual basis. But it is a concerted effort to basically train them and equip them with the skills to do that in a way that reflects the ability to listen and engage with the community. Thank you.
So is it a consensus of keeping this as a separate objective, or can this be included in 5.1?
I think it can be included in 5.1 and would probably be better there, because I also don't think it's not focused on public image. It's the, telling our story that we talked about before. So
5.4, complete and celebrate penny projects to create excitement in the community. Develop a comprehensive strategy for transportation penny projects, and then establish a landing page on county website for penny projects.
I take no issue with this. I wasn't sure if it should be combined with something else or not. It's obviously a huge initiative at the county, so I think that there's a case that can be made either way, but I'm fine with this.
Mr. Livingston?
I'm okay with the way it is.
Okay. I'm overall okay with it. I think there is just some wordsmithing as far as excitement. I mean, we're using adjective, but overall, I'm okay with what it says, and I'll share some of my text edits with staff. 5.5, communicate vision and mission throughout county and residents. Develop consistent talking points, clearly develop the county's identity, remove communication silos, use of keywords and taglines for the mission statement. I also think all of this can be included in 5.1.
I do too. And again, this was just one of those areas that I just found so granular that I don't, while I support all these things, I don't know if I would want all these things to be in our strategic plan in this part so specifically. I mean, it's almost like day-to-day tasks that people would have to do that I don't know if they need to be in here. Not removing communication silos, certainly that, but talking about hashtags and taglines, I don't know that I want my strategic plan to be that detailed.
Ms. Livingston?
So you just moving it to
Yes. 5.6, involve residents in community engagement plan development. And so I think, let's see, initiatives develop a community engagement plan with realistic expectations of potential benefits. I like this one. I think the objective itself should just be changed to developing a community engagement plan. But other than that, I don't have any other comments. Ms. Newton?
No, I'm good with that. It's just my boring comments that I'll make on all these things that, some of it is just really granular to be at this level. It's more, it's not on the tactic level, it's more on or even the initiative level. It's kind of drilling down into the really detailed tactic level.
Mr. Livingston? Okay. 5.7, ensure residents have a clear understanding of what county government functions are. Reestablish Richland 101, establish communication strategy addressing other entities with the words Richland County. Create staff and council fieldwork initiative to enhance visibility. Ms. Newton?
So, Ms. Mackey?
Yep.
Yes. I like all of these. And I'm not sure what the wording would be, but basically something like establishing something like Richland 101. And the reason that I say it that way, I think Richland 101 was great and we missed it, but I'm concerned that if we say you must recreate this program, that it means that it'll be done just as it was always done, whereas times may have changed, there may be different things that we want to do, and I don't want us to issue such a granular directive to staff that it limits their creativity as opposed to the objective of Richland 101 and communicating that type of information to citizens.
We just scratch through Richland 1 and just simply establish an education campaign.
That works for me.
Any other thoughts, changes? Great. All right, so that is all the goals under goal 5. Any other communication initiatives or thoughts that we did not cover about positive public engagement? Goal 6, establish operational excellence. 6.1, establish competitive salaries, explore livable wage, undertake compensation study, implement to reclassify positions. So thoughts, I know some of this, I guess, has been underway already. Any thoughts on this?
Ms. Mackey, that's actually my question, is how much of this is already underway? And then I'll just go ahead and put my next question out there. And I'm not being silly, but as I read the information about salaries, there's, information about getting the information, but it doesn't actually say paying the salary. So I don't know if we need to add some item that, talks about incorporating recommendations into the budget process, or if it's taken as a given, but I did want to mention that. So my question is, how much of this is happening now? And then, do we need to mention something regarding funding or implementation?
Mr. Brown?
So some of it is occurring now. Some of the things that are occurring now are, in some respects, kind of staff-led initiatives, whereas we want to establish really a program for this is how we look to address salaries or compensation. So we can modify some of these things, but I do think it certainly sends the type of message that you want to send, that you have a focus and a priority on establishing a consistent review, a consistent look at how you address compensation in the county. So I would be concerned if you just removed it altogether, because then it would not look as though we would be prioritizing a continual assessment of our compensation specific to salaries and benefits as an organization.
And Ms. Mackey, if I may, I wasn't suggesting that we remove it. It was really just for my information.
Okay, yes, ma'am.
Did that answer your question, Ms. Newton?
Yes, enough for this conversation.
Okay. Mr. Livingston? 6.2, encourage investment in employee and county development, determine appropriate staffing levels, and implement a workforce development program, establish internships, stipends, and grants for workforce growth. Those are the only 2. Thoughts on those? Okay. .3, modernize technology, perform a technology assessment, further develop a cybersecurity program, redesign website and add technology, and work closely with department leaders to recruit and retain high quality talent. So for this one, was said modernize technology. It has the website, but that's been included in goal 5. So I wasn't sure if it needed to be listed again here, if there was another reason why. So I recommend removing there. And then work closely with department leaders to recruit and retain high quality talent. Not sure if that made sense here under modernizing technology.
I think both of those can be removed. If I had to guess, I think they were talking about stop not only using traditional methods that did not include new social ways of getting folks to apply to jobs. I think maybe someone was looking at that, but again, I would remove that from here and understand that that's accomplished in other places.
Ms. Newton, any thoughts?
Just have a question. So I agree that it feels a little shoehorned here, but I'm not clear that it actually is covered other places. So whatever editing process takes place, I would want people to make sure, because recruiting and retaining high quality talent is a huge challenge for every organization and for us as well. And so I really don't want it to be lost in the shuffle while we move it.
So the initiative is, and I'm just making sure I'm hearing right, the initiative is right. I think we both agree that it does not fit under the objective of modernized technology, but you just want to make sure that it is actually included somewhere else. Is that correct?
100%.
Okay. Objective 6.4, address employee-related matters. Develop an implementation strategy using the results of the compensation study, review health insurance, and update the grievance policy. So the first two, I don't think belong here, but maybe I'm reading it wrong. Because I think the implementation strategy was already included in 6.1. Is that correct or no?
I think that's correct. I think
Okay.
this is probably one of those times where people were looking at different things and
then health insurance and benefits, that is also included in I don't see it included, but should it be in 6.1? Or is this where it should be?
it could go under 6.1. But 6.1, I think, was more focused on actual monetary compensation versus benefits and those types of associated things. So you could either modify one to accomplish compensation or separate out like you have it here or or define it some other way. I think it's just a different focus.
So for objective 6.1, are committee members okay with changing to establish competitive, what did you say, compensation?
Be compensation, which could
Establish competitive compensation, and then under initiatives, adding health insurance to that goal?
Yeah.
Or to that, okay. Ms. Livingston, you okay with that?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so we're removing review health insurance and adding it to 6.1 and changing 6.1 to establish competitive compensation.
Ms. Mackey?
Yes, ma'am.
But the first bullet point is going away altogether because included in 6.1 as well. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So then that leaves us with what is currently the third bullet point about the grievance process.
Correct. And then my question with that one is, does it match what the objective says as far as address? Because I'm not sure address employee related matters, if that even fits with the grievance initiative.
Ms. Mackey,
Yes, ma'am.
I think that either way, the wording of this probably needs to be addressed. I think what I took as the heart of this objective is really a priority of, you know, valuing and prioritizing our employees and wanting to make sure that we are listening, addressing their concerns, and making this a good workplace. So that was kind of what I heard as the heart of this. And so, you know, whether we change the words or not, I guess I'd like to know if I'm correct. And then if I am correct, then there is something that I would like to add to the objective, whatever we call it and wherever we put it.
Yes, based off my recollection, that is correct. This is more about, you know, employees enjoying their place of work.
And so what I would like to add, and I don't know the right language for this, but some sort of what I put in my notes was a feedback mechanism where we are constantly getting input from our employees about what their experiences are to work here. And I have a vague recollection that Mr. Brown may have mentioned some of the types of things that he has ongoing already. But I do think that it needs to be an express goal of ours that we are inquisitive and exploring, you know, how we can get input from our staff.
Mr. Livingston, any thoughts?
Oh, so we'll keep that one there and then just stand alone. And like you said, it doesn't quite fit the objective by itself.
Correct. I would like to change the wording for the objective because I'm not sure if the wording meets what we're talking about or what is under there. So I'm sorry I don't have suggestions right now, but we'll make notes and if we could work on some wording to update that. .5, develop metrics of accountability. Implement a process of strategic plan management to correspond to the strategic plan. Conduct employee performance evaluations annually. And introduce standard operating procedures for all strategic objectives in Goal 6. Ms. Newton?
I'm good.
Mr. Livingston? So my question would be for the second, conduct employee performance evaluations annually. If that fits under 6.5, when you talk about develop metrics of accountability, is that the right place? Or does that tie in to the one above where we're talking about the employees being able to give feedback, but then also them getting feedback through these evaluations that we commit to performing annually? So question is, does that initiative, does it really fit in 6.5 or should it be with 6.4?
Can I speak from an operational standpoint?
Yes.
I would say it would be appropriate for 6.5 based off the fact that I think the wording for 6.4, you were going to try to address employees being able to provide feedback in general. And that type of feedback won't really come to the council as their performance unless that we implement some type of performance, rewards, and you would get a general information about rewards that were given out because employees generally in these areas, did, what level of performance. So I think it'll be slightly different. I understand your question, but I do think 6.5 in that second initiative would be something that departments would implement as a metric, and you would be able to then determine whether or not departments are strategically helping the county move forward, because we would know departments, or what percentage of departments are actually doing annual evaluations, not so much what's on the evaluation. I hope that helps.
Yes, thank you. All right, anything else for 6.5?
Yeah, I don't have wordsmithing right now, but I'm presuming that what the objective means about staying the course is that we're continuing to pursue our strategic plan and objectives, as opposed to some sort of just blindly doing stuff we've been doing before. So I guess I would just ask if we can all just take a look at that wording and see if there might be something that might be a little more explicit about what we're trying to do.
I agree. On my sheet, I actually struck through stay the course.
Yeah.
I just had
honestly,
developed metrics of accountability for the strategic plan.
Yeah, if that works for others, that's fine with me.
Ms. Mackey, just for information, my understanding of what the attempt was there was the larger goal is operational excellence. So staying the course by performing these evaluations would be how we are ensuring that we'll continue to stay on the course of pursuing operational excellence. Again, not saying that we shouldn't strike it, but I think that was the connection that was trying to be made in that particular area.
Okay. That's helpful for me. I'm sorry, Ms. Mackey, that comment was addressed to you. And maybe if it was stay on track, just connotatively staying the course can mean different things.
All right, 6.6, create reporting dashboards. Implement a performance measurement system to document progress and notify council members about activities in their district. All right, Mr. Livingston?
I'm good. I'm just trying to decide whether I'll be specific about any type of activities, but I'm good for now.
Ms. Newton?
I guess I had a question about the notifying council, if that just meant when we're doing operational things, or I certainly support it. There have been many times when I have wanted to know more.
Yeah.
So I guess, and it doesn't have to be right now, I would just like to know more about what this is so that I can support it even more.
I don't want to speak on behalf of the group that actually identified this, but I think from what I understood, there are a lot of activities from time to time that take place in council members' districts. And a lot of times these are planned activities. And these planned activities are not always communicated. And so council members are not always aware and have the ability to be informed of them. And so I think part of that arises just simply from making sure as you plan these activities that they're planned so that council members, number one, are aware, but number two, they can actually participate and have the opportunity to do so. And I can just think of one particular initiative. I will not name any council member district or council member where something was scheduled that a council person would have attended, but there was a conflict. And because there was no notification, there was no opportunity for the member to participate in the dates associated with it, nor give a proper notice of their ability to attend so that the citizens in that community would not get the impression that the member did not support or it was not important to the council member.
It'd be too much to say plan activities / events.
I'm okay with that.
Because I don't, if it's not a scheduled or planned activity, then I don't want you to be accountable for council members knowing or having to know. So if it's a planned activity or event, it makes sense.
So,
All right, any other
also,
thoughts? Go ahead, Ms. Newton.
yeah, on the notifying council members again, I would, it's not possible for me to support that more. I'm not clear if this is where it belongs though, but if this is the best place for now, then I'm happy for it to be here.
Six point seven, address current and future resource needs. Complete 911 center, build and complete family services center, develop realistic 2, 5, and 10-year capital improvement plan, and quarterly meetings with division network infrastructure for Richland County Information Technology. All right, I'll go first. I thought that the capital improvement plan was actually included in another goal.
I believe you're correct, Ms. Mackey.
Was that in goal 4 is what I have? Well, and more specifically, objective 4.2. And so I would suggest removing that from 6.7. And then the quarterly meetings, I believe, can go under the technology piece that we already have.
Regarding the 911 center, is the November 2023 a firm deadline before we put it in here? And then also it says, and other ongoing capital development projects. I'm not clear what those are, but we're associating them with a date certain. So I don't know if that needs to be moved to its own bullet or if that goal needs to be worded differently.
I would say in this particular instance, the date certain would need to be different simply because we don't control all the resources to make sure that that happens. And in terms of lumping the other capital development projects together in that, I can certainly see just removing that just in general because it's, number one, you did not want to get granular, but also the same thing would apply in terms of those projects. I think the idea is we have capital projects that we have funded that have not been completed. And so it's to give structure to the idea that when you provide these funds, they are to be used to complete the projects that were anticipated. So there may be a better way to address that, Ms. Newton, but I think that was the ultimate focus of trying to move the needle on those projects.
Well, in that case, Mr. Brown, however it is that we word it, I think that that should be put in that way, because I think it was just Tuesday night that I found out about a capital project that I wasn't aware of previously, that hasn't been completed. So I definitely support adding the accountability for getting those done, but saying that every single one of them is going to be done by this random date is a little bit alarming.
Mr. Livingston? Just previously, I mentioned about the quarterly meetings for the technology department, and just to clarify, I have moved that to 6.3. And Ms. Newton, I understand what you're saying about the projects, and I'm looking at this and what we've talked about. I do think there's probably a little bit of change that needs to happen with the wording, because I'm not sure. I guess I'm not seeing the connection in here in these initiatives, how it ties back to establish operational excellence, because it's really talking about projects and not necessarily, I guess, tracking or operational things to get to excellence. And so I'm not seeing the connection. Any thoughts from staff on and how this ties to operational excellence, or maybe is this more of a, I don't know, you help me, but I don't know if it's more of a budgetary thing that we're trying to track so that we complete these and that creates operational excellence. But
I think it's in short, it's probably a stretch to put it here.
okay.
It was probably where do we put it, and maybe we didn't have a overall goal that fully addressed it, but it was such a significant investment by the county that it needed to be addressed somewhere so that these funds, again, would be moving and accomplishing what they're designed to accomplish.
So could we look back at goal 3 where we talk about commit to fiscal responsibility? Is there some way to tie that in and making us looking at responsibility of how we're spending the money for the projects?
We also, don't we have a facilities?
Yes.
That facilities section where this could maybe go?
In short, we definitely can move it.
Okay, so we're gonna move 6.7 with just the first 2 initiatives with edits that we discussed to a different section. And we'll leave that to staff to make a recommendation if it's under fiscal responsibility or a section that's tied to facilities. .8, build a new courthouse, develop proactive maintenance plans. Which is a lot. Ms. Newton.
Oh, sorry, I was flipping the pages in my notes. I guess, and again, we need to do all these things, but we have this facilities section. And so it seems to me like what we need to be doing is talking about how we can address our specific facilities plans and needs. And I just don't know. I don't know that I recall this being pulled out separately this way. And so I think it needs to be here, but it seems like it might be better part of something else. I'm just trying to look through my notes here.
Mr. Livingston.
That building stuff under 6.7.
So I think 6.8, the first part of 6.8, build a new courthouse, I think falls under capital improvement plan. And if that courthouse is in that plan, we've addressed that. I don't think it's a separate bullet. I think it falls into our overall capital improvement projects. So I think that then leaves develop a proactive maintenance plan for our facilities, not just the courthouse, but for our facilities, which I feel that could go under the facilities section.
Just moving that as the fourth bullet under 6.7, or just leaving where it is?
So I think the first part, the courthouse, moves under, it's for something else, where we already have the capital improvement plan listed. And then I think the maintenance plan.
I just said that because on the 6.7, we're talking about building stuff.
Mr. Livingston, but I think if I'm not incorrect, we talked about moving, the first two items to another section that would be most appropriate, that staff is supposed to go back and look at the overall plan and provide a recommendation. And that the third bullet point of that same 6.7 section would be removed. And then the fourth item under there would be also moved to a different section, which was related to the technology. So in essence, 6.7 would not be there anymore.
But I think, I guess what you're saying, Ms. Listen, we could probably take wherever you're moving 6.7, we could probably figure out how to incorporate.
Moving with the other, you talk about building the family service, building call center, you building the courthouse, so it can go with those wherever they are.
Yes, sir.
Okay, Ms. Newton? Good?
I don't have any comments.
Okay. Guess what, y'all? That was the last one. Any overall thoughts? Anything you feel like, man, we did not address this in the strategic plan, and I really want to address it, even if you don't know where it should go, but you really think we need to include it?
Get all the changes that we made first, and then I might figure out something when it gets.
All right, so we've gone through all the goals. The next step is working with staff to address the goals and the objectives and initiatives, along with recommended timelines that we've discussed, to bring back the document to the committee. We then ask that we do one final review of the document with those updates, and I'm hoping the next review, it shouldn't take as long since we've gone one by one, but more of a review of looking at it to make sure it's addressed all of our edits and to see if we're ready to move forward to council for their review.
And Ms. Mackey?
Yes, ma'am.
I think we got excited that Mr. Livingston was okay. I did have one thing that I just, when we're going back and looking at this, I think, as we look at our overall goals about the kind of place that we are, I don't know how or where we address quality of life issues as part of this. And I think it's included in many of these components, but that is just something that I would like to bring to the fore to make sure that we are addressing it where appropriate.
All right, anything else you want to add, or are you just making sure quality of life is included somewhere, quality of life issues? Anything specific related to that?
No, I mean, because that'll get too granular. And then I guess otherwise, just generally looking at this document when they come back, just making sure that we have the appropriate level of detail, because there's some places where we're keeping it high level and there's some places where we're really, really down in the weeds. Not that those things aren't important, but just making sure that we calibrate appropriately.
Staff, any other thoughts? Anything else you need from us?
We'll wait to hear the remarks related to the edits and see what we can do to continue moving forward. Ms. Maggie, thank you.
All right, well, we are at the next item on the agenda.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Livingston,
Yes.
Mackey,
Yes.
Newton.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Meeting adjourned. Thank you.